Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm going to let my co-hosts introduce themselves since we found out last week that a lot of people apparently don't know which one is Jeff and which one is Joe. So say hi, guys.
Hello, this is Jeff.
And this is Joe.
All right, you guys got it now? Excellent. And our guest today is Mark Lefebvre. Mark, do you want to say hi too?
Hi, this is Mark.
All right, and he's a repeat guest. You guys may remember we had him back on episode 78, and he is the director of self-publishing and author relations at Kobo, as well as being a horror author in his own right. And last time we talked about international sales trends, pricing, how to sell more books at Kobo, and we're going to ask him a little more about what's been going on at Kobo, because some of you may have heard they've got a new subscription program, among other things. And then we're going to just chat a little bit, and we figure Mark's kind of in the know with what's going on in the industry, and just kind of find out, I don't know, what's going on with the trends and maybe his thoughts on where things are going and what we should be paying attention to. So hi, Mark. Do you want to tell us a little about yourself that I didn't already cover?
Sure. Well, you got it right. Normally my last name, you pronounced it perfectly, by the way, but the other way to pronounce it is it's pronounced from Kobo. So Mark from Kobo, that's how you pronounce that big long last name that you see there.
Do you spell that with one word or two?
Well, it's usually a hyphenated word, so it depends on where you stand in that. I thought it might be good to share a little bit about Kobo Plus. I think I saw some questions that had come in prior to the podcast. Is that a good place to start to kind of talk about that program and why we launched it? Or
well, I was going to ask you if you've written anything.
Oh, you're going to talk writing
in case
stuff.
you wanted to like plug anything or let us know.
You know what? Okay, I'm really excited to plug. This is Mark with the writer hat on this side of my head and the Kobo hat on that side of my head. So we've been working very collaboratively with WMG Publishing, which is Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush, two giants of the science fiction, fantasy, and many other genres, but those are the two prime ones they're probably known for. And WMG Publishing has been doing this great series called the Fiction River Anthology Series, where they have professional writers submit some content. And I'm really excited that the very first edition that has been co-produced by Kobo and WMG Publishing, where WMG is doing the paperback version and Kobo is publishing the digital version, myself as editor, Mark Leslie, we're releasing in May, Editor's Choice, which is a great anthology. So I was at one of these sessions 2 years ago, watching professional editors, so Dean and Chris and Kevin J. Anderson, Rebecca Mista, John Helfers, and Carrie Hughes struggle with these amazing stories they had, and they could only pick about 12 to 15 stories each from over 1.5 million words of amazing stories by some very talented writers. So Dean and I had conspired that I would take the stories that, so for example, the editor will shortlist maybe down to 18 stories, but they can only keep 15. So I was keeping those 3 stories that they just couldn't buy but wanted to aside. And on the very last day, we surprised the authors by letting them know there was going to be an additional anthology called Editor's Choice, where I took the best of the stories they couldn't use, and I created my own themed anthology from that. And so that's going to be released this spring. And then just the way publishing schedules happen, Feel the Fear, a themed anthology I'm editing with them with the same sort of co-branded Kobo Writing Life and WMG is coming out in the fall. So there's my personal writing stuff, but perfectly tied into my Kobo life. Just to keep, I'm on the clock still, right?
You can be if you want to be. I think it's 9 p.m. over there, but no, that's actually, one of the things that's cool is that you are an author and you do write as well as being Kobo Mark, or Mark from Kobo. So it's great to hear, and I imagine, I don't know, interesting to hear how you see what's going on and you're able to use some of the marketing know-how, maybe, perhaps.
Potentially.
Your stuff. And that's good to know about
I haven't taken great advantage of it. Ironically, it's kind of funny because, I just got accepted for a Kobo promo today for next month. And I'm so excited because I haven't gotten accepted in several months. Because, again, just because I work there.
Yeah, no favoritism.
Just because I'm the person's boss doesn't mean if it's not a book that they think is going to sell in the promo, they don't accept it. It doesn't matter who you are. So that's kind of cool. I like that.
You sent out the memo that said, if you do not choose this book for next month, guess where you're working?
Yeah, that's right. No, but it's funny. I mean, it's interesting because I look at it and I go, man, I wish I could have gotten in the March promo because it looked really good, but that just ended. That just ended today. But it's kind of funny because as a writer myself, I'm in the bucket with everyone else. And yeah, I work there, and even when I have my traditionally published books, and I run up an advanced reader's copy to the merchandisers, because they sit across the hall, they're just as likely to dismiss my book as they are any other book, or to get excited about one of my books, although they haven't yet gotten excited about any one of my books. But I'm not going to whine or anything.
They're waiting for the whine.
But it does give me the perception and the reality of what it is like for the standard. And I would call myself a very, 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 very low mid-list or D-list author in our ranks, because I don't rank anywhere near superstars like Lindsay, of course, or anything like that in terms of all the cool stuff that's going on.
All right. Well, that's interesting too that you're working with WGM is their publishing company, because on Joanna's, we talked to her last week on the show, and she said, you got to take this course in October from Dean and Chris on the business of writing. And then they said, oh yeah, Mark's going to be there. So I signed up, and I was kind of wondering.
Oh, you're going to be there in October?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was wondering like how they got you, so now I know that you guys have a working relationship going on.
Yeah, I think I went, I found out through probably Writers of the Future, and I've been friends with Kevin J. Anderson for a while, so he introduced me to Dean and Chris, and Dean brought me in 3 or 4 years ago to come and talk for one day at one of the workshops. I happened to be traveling not too far away, so it was a quick diversion to head out there. Well, not quick, because you fly to Portland and you drive for 3 hours. But I managed to do it, and it was amazing, because what I love and value about what they teach at the masterclass is they really dig into teaching you the business of writing. So I really like that, because the craft is common. You can get the craft almost anywhere, but it's really hard. Especially these people have been in the publishing industry for 3 or 4 decades. They've seen. I think I've been I've been in the publishing writing industry, or book selling industry for 25 years, and I think I know lots. Every time I sit down with Dean and Chris, I go, wow. I remember being a beginning writer back before the internet, script job, and submitting stuff to Dean Wesley Smith from Pulp House magazine and getting rejected. You know what I mean? Like back in the snail mail and all that stuff. So it was just last month when I was there for the latest workshop, and I'm thinking, how did this happen? How did I luck out that I get to be hanging out with this guy who I dreamed of selling a story to him one day, and now I'm editing one of his anthologies that they're publishing. So I often think of myself as extremely lucky to have the position that I have.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. And now for anybody that wants to stalk Mark or myself, we'll be randomly on the Oregon coast in October, 3 hours from I won't say 3 hours from anywhere, but I've been there.
Oh, oops.
I've been surfing there before. You got to wear a wetsuit. It's really cold. That's cold ocean.
You're brave if you've surfed out on the Oregon West Coast. Is dangerous.
Well, there's some spots. There's little coves like between Cannon Beach and I think where they are. They're farther down. But yeah, it's cold water.
I learned to dive in the Puget Sound area, Washington State. It's so freaking cold. Expletives do not do it justice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a bit north from there, isn't it? Is it a couple hours?
Yeah, it's about, I would say, from Portland to Tacoma, Seattle, where I was at, it's about, I think, 2.5, 3 hours.
Wow. And the swimming,
yeah.
It would be about 8 hours, right?
Yeah, water.
If you're Michael Phelps.
Water's so cold, even with a wetsuit on, you can't even get the breath to swear. So just keep that in mind.
Can't even get the breath to swear. That's a slogan for a T-shirt, I think.
There you go.
All right, for those authors out there who want to sell books and not surf, Mark, why don't you tell us what's been going on at Kobo, and maybe how we can take advantage of it, or at least what we should know about it.
Yeah, well, I think I wanted to share a little bit about Kobo Plus, because that's relatively new. And Kobo Plus is a new a program that we just launched with our partners in the Netherlands. So just a quick backstory for anyone who's not in the know, although if you listen to this podcast, you know lots. So Kobo partners with retailers. We don't just come into a territory, but we partner. So in the US, we've partnered with the American Booksellers Association, with 300 independent bookstores across the US. In Canada, it's Chapters Indigo, which is kind of like a Barnes & Noble. And then WH Smith in the UK, and Fnac in France, and Mondadori in Italy. And Bol, who's a major retailer in the Netherlands, has wanted to launch a subscription service because they've done analysis of the market to show that there is a huge portion. I mean, the Netherlands is a strong, large reading market, particularly thrillers. They just love their thrillers there. But there's a huge portion of the market that is really, really, really well served by libraries. So they read a lot, but they don't buy a lot. And we saw stats that would show, yes, we have a good a la carte business, selling units, unit by unit, but there was a thirst in the market can eat or all you can consume subscription model where you pay 10 euros or 9.99 euros a month, and it's all you can read. So we looked at the demographics. Bol was very excited to provide this to the customer base that they knew has been itching for it. So we developed a program, and the key thing that we were really concerned about, because we all hear the doom and gloom stories about subscription services, except for something like Kindle Unlimited, where Amazon doesn't ever really need to make money. They just make money somehow magically. So they lose money per every volume they sell, but they make it up in volume. So it's some sort of hocus pocus magic or whatever. So, or they just sell a refrigerator for every 6,000 books they lose money on. But in most subscription services that we've seen in the last couple of years, some of the services have had to cut off romance readers because they read too much. So it's been a tough thing. You say, well, you can all you can read except for you romance readers, and then that slowly goes out of business because they set it up so it was not scalable. They set it up so that if people read too much, the company doesn't make money, right? In terms of the payout. So the way we structured the payout was we structured the payout so that no matter how big it gets, no matter how popular it gets, we can't lose money. And if we only get one subscriber, we still can't lose money. No matter how many reads we get. If we have 1 million subscribers, we can't lose money. So 60% goes to the publisher or author, if you're the large publisher, or you're the Kobo Writing Life author who's doing it directly. And 40% goes to the retailer. And the retailer is kind of 20% to Kobo and 20% to Bol, right? So our retail partner. And so we've set up a model where no matter how big or small it gets, so we know it's sustainable. And then they've also applied a few elements to it, such as the price factor. So, somebody dipping in and trying to game the system by just creating really short 99-cent books, getting the same amount of money that, a 300-page fantasy novel would get is not going to be the same thing. So, some of the learnings were also applying a price factor to that. So there's a pot that everyone can build from. There's a price factor so that if your retail price is higher and you get a read, you're going to get slightly more than the person who has a lower retail price and gets a read. So it's based very much on what the retail market will bear in terms of selling and stuff like that. So that launched last month, I believe. And Kobo Writing Life authors have the ability to opt in directly in the Rights and Distribution tab. So if you log into your Kobo Writing Life account, you click on Rights and Distribution. That's where you control DRM, yes or no. And you control whether or not you have world rights, which is our default, or not. Then you can just deselect maybe where you've sold the rights to a publisher, or your agent is trying to shop around or whatever. And then right below that is where you could opt into Kobo Plus. The terms of service are there. We've also posted them to the blog because of a weird thing where they don't appear easily after you've selected them. So we tried to make them a little bit more visible to authors. And that's kind of how Kobo Plus works. And the way the payment works is the Kobo Writing Life team is now working on the UX experience to show the reads as part of the dashboard experience, something that will probably be rolled out over the summer. But as it stands now, the reporting will happen through a manual financial spreadsheet report that will come to authors and publishers in the exact same way that the monthly sales Excel targets come in. So you'll see this book got read this many times. Here's the total bucket. Here's your price factor. Here's what you're going to get for that rate. And I haven't actually even seen one of those reports yet. So I know they're just still compiling them after the first go round, and then that will just be added onto your account, so your publisher account. Kobo Writing Life, any way to expand on those? So Kobo Writing Life is kind of like Kindle Direct Publishing. I'm just answering a question that I saw in the comments.
I was like, what are you looking at, Mark?
I saw a comment pop up, so I'm just answering
Jeff.
it on the fly. I hope that's okay.
Please do, yes.
Either
Kobo
that or
Writing Life.
interrupt. That's the whole point of the chat over there, right?
That's awesome. That's actually, look at that. Kobo Writing Life is like Kindle Direct Publishing without the Select, without the Kindle Unlimited, without the exclusivity. It's a portal that we built and it launched 5 years ago. You can find it at kobowritinglife.com. There's a link over on the right-hand side to take you right there. Or if you're so industrious and want to go to kobo.com and try to find it, good luck. It's at the very bottom of the header. Or you can go to kobo.com/writinglife. But the reason we purchased the domain and have our blog and our podcast on kobowritinglife.com is to make it easier. kobowritinglife.com, nice and easy. We even have a .fr for French people and a .it for Italian folks. And we'll continuing to expand that globally to make sure that people who aren't necessarily native English folks who want to still get some value have the opportunity to connect with us. So Kobo Writing Life, you sign up for a free account, you get your 70% if your book is priced $2.99 or higher. One of the main differences, because I like to point this out, is that you are not limited to cap your price at $9.99 for your 70%. So for those authors who have lots of books and want to do a large box set, we're not forcing you to price it down at $10. We still give you the 70% no matter how high you go. And I was just looking at sales stats from last week, and we had numbers of titles that were box sets for $45 and $39 that were, in our bestseller list for last week. So the Kobo customer who's particularly into an author or a series is definitely willing to buy quality over bargain bin shopping. And that's something we're really excited about. And we want to encourage authors to experiment with their global pricing as well, because we know that a decent, relatively low US price is good, but we know that in other territories, especially in Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you can probably walk your price up just a little bit higher in terms of, so the price tolerance is different in different markets. But I'm just babbling on and I'm going in no direction right now. So please reel me back in, guys. I'm out of control.
All right. Well, that's what happens after 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. wherever you fall. No, that's good with the big box sets. I haven't done it yet. It's on my to-do list, like so many things. But I heard Joanna and Mark Dawson, she just had him on the show, talking about that was one way to actually make Facebook ads work. Like you could spend a little more on the ads because then the box set was $25 or something. Yes,
you're making $18 or $19 for one unit sale. So that makes your cost per click pretty decent in terms of your conversion.
If you can get them to click and buy.
Mark has done it so many times, so brilliantly. I see his ads all the time because I guess I'm part of his demographic market.
Yep, you're his people. For the subscription, I guess I'm going to have to go in and, so you manually select which books you want to go in. Is there any reason why you wouldn't just go in and select all your stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you the catches, and this is an important catch because a few authors have gotten really upset about it. You have to do it one by one. We want you to be able to do it one by one. If you have a lot of titles, and some authors have contacted us, just email us at writinglife@kobo.com. If you'd like to put all your titles that are active into the subscription service, just email us. It'll take us about 24, 48 hours. We give your account ID to the development team, and they run the script in the background overnight, and it automatically adds all your titles. So if you have 100 titles and you don't want to go click by click by click, you can do that. Now, there is no exclusivity request, unlike that other place. But here's the catch. Please keep your book published for 6 months. I know it's ridiculous of us to ask someone to actually keep their book published for 6 months, but a lot of people have gotten really upset going, but I can't go in and out of KDP Select. It was really what they're saying. So we actually have that built in because the terms, and this is something I fight for all the time, when we create terms and conditions for big publishers, I fight for indie authors to get the exact same terms. I say we are at Kobo, just to give you a headspace, last week we cracked above 25% in the English language of unit sales for Kobo Writing Life, meaning this doesn't even count Smashwords and Draft to Digital and all the other indie spots. Kobo Writing Life alone, 1 in every 4 books that sold last week on Kobo in the English language was an independently published title, published through Kobo Writing Life. I mean, Kobo Writing Life authors, you're one of them, Lindsay, make up the most successful publisher on Kobo today. So when they put out new programs and they say, well, we're going to give this to Random House and Hachette and all these big publishers, I say, we're going to give the same terms to our authors too, because they are as powerful and as important as the major publishers. They are providing our customers, our readers, with fantastic quality content, and they deserve to have access. Now, the catch is, that's the terms that we're giving to the big publishers. We ask that they keep the books in for 6 months. So you're not able to delist a book if you opted in. So if you're playing the game of wanting to come in and out of KDP Select, and more often than I change my underwear, that's the thing that you can tell I like mocking that attitude, because it does nobody any favors, at least on our side of the fence. Maybe it does Amazon favors. But if that's the case, I would argue don't bother opting the titles in, because you're just going to get frustrated. 90-day underwear change is a comment. That's funny. No, I change them at least once a week, whether I need to or not. Come on, guys. But no, it's a case where if that's the case, or if you are in the process of negotiating with an agent or something like that and you're worried, we do actually, the rule is, it's locked in for 6 months. You can't delist it. However, there may come a case where you need to delist it for whatever reason. You can still contact us and we will manually remove it for you. But we don't want to manage by exception. We know that's an exception, and if it is, contact us. We're not evil people. We usually reasonably work with people. So you say, well, listen, I need to take the book down because I'm going to delist it because I'm going to redo the entire series or whatever. Or I'd like, hey, you know what? I don't like Kobo anymore. I'm going into KDP Select. Okay, fine. So we will do that for you. But by default, we lock it in. Now, one of the reasons we want to keep it in is we're not just working with folks at Kobo on this. We're working with a retail partner who's very passionate about finding good quality content. And our merchandisers seek titles 6 to 12 weeks in the future to plan their merchandising. So if we have a title that they know is in the subscription service, they want to know that in 12 weeks, which when they may be planning the next feature spot, they want to know the title's not going to be gone. So that wastes a whole bunch of time for planning. So having it locked in gives them a little bit of assurance that they can plan things a little bit in the future, and they know, okay, this book isn't going to disappear next week or in 5 weeks or whatever. So that's one of the reasons why we have that. But that may be why someone doesn't want to opt in.
All right, that's understandable on Kobo's behalf. And I think we usually recommend that if somebody's going to try KDP Select, probably launch that way and then move out if they want to go wide. Rather, I don't really see anybody succeeding when they do the in and out thing.
Oh, you'd be amazed how many people do it.
Well, they're like, I'm not selling here. Let me see if I will, not sell better over here.
Yeah.
It seems to be how it goes. But I think the launch is your best time to try KDP Select if you want.
Yeah, and if it's still treating you nice, then stick with it. And if it's an abusive spouse, then find your own way. Step out.
Jeff won't say anything bad about Amazon, because the last time we discussed things, he got kicked out of the KDP.
We love the other people.
Oh, we love them. Oh God, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Hey,
He's
been there,
back
done
now.
that. I'm back.
I won't kick you out. I'll just make a bad underwear joke.
No, I like the fact that you have all this power and you're willing to work with them, which means you're not ruling with an iron fist. So that's kind of nice.
Oh, you don't really get anywhere. I mean, our Kobo has always been about collaboration, and we consider yes, we've opened up our tool and we're a retailer and we want to sell your books, but we're really collaborating with you, because we don't really make money until we sell your book to a consumer. And we keep that cut. So we have to play nice. We don't have all the power in the universe and bottomless pockets. So we have to play nice. So there, we're forced to. It's not because we're Canadian or nice or anything like that. It's just because we're forced to play nice. Don't let anyone have too much power, then they get mean.
We're going to let Joe ask a few questions. He's been quiet, and I'll let him decide if he wants to tell you why his camera is off today or not. You might just go right into more questions.
I will say why my camera is off. I fell on my face today and have a fat lip and a broken tooth, and that would be distracting to our viewers. So my first question is relatively short. I'm not, this answer may not be available yet, but You were talking about Kobo as a collaborator. They've always played nice with distributors like Smashwords or Drafted Digital. Any idea if people through Smashwords or Drafted Digital are going to eventually be able to be a part of the subscription service?
Yeah, actually, I know for a fact that the folks at Drafted Digital were working on something, and I was in contact with Kevin or Dan, and I know Siobhan, who is the contact person that they deal with in our US office. I know that she was working with them to get something in place so that Drafted Digital authors could come in. And don't quote me on this, but I seem to remember Smashwords wasn't really interested in it for their authors, but Drafted Digital was. But again, that could have changed because I've been traveling the last couple of weeks, so I haven't had a chance to chat with either one of them about that recently. But I know that that's the plan, and the plan is, I mean, our goal is, yeah, we build certain things directly in Kobo Writing Life because it's easy and we can do it, but we don't want authors to be at a disadvantage if they choose to come in through a third party. Like I often say, we don't discriminate against traditionally published authors. We don't discriminate against authors who are coming in through an aggregator. We may not be able to do anything directly for them. Like I can't go in and touch the titles or edit them, but if you had an issue with the Kobo Writing Life title, I have a tool that allows me to go in and quickly tweak something for you. But yeah, we know that those companies serve authors really, really well, and they provide authors an incredible value because you can go through them and not have to sign up and have an account with every single platform. And for some authors, they would rather have them take a small cut of that and not worry about having to log into 4 or 5 different places to update their books. So we have to respect that, because at the end of the day, if an author publishes and distributes to Kobo through a third party, whoever they are, Kobo itself has that book for our customers to read. I may not be able to do anything directly to help promote it or whatever, because I kind of, I get to keep my job if Kobo Writing Life is successful and we sell a lot of Kobo Writing Life titles. So I'm going to be a little bit more partial to pushing on those titles. But at the end of the day, we win, and Kobo has titles available for our customer, because that's our main job as a retailer. That's all we do is ebooks. So it's about, here's the writer and publisher, here's the reader. What can we do to bring those things together? Not in a violent way, but maybe in a handshake way. How's that? There you go. Nice, friendly high five.
Excellent. Speaking of doing things the ebook way, one of the big things that makes ebooks so economical is that there is practically, and I do air quotes that you can't see, no delivery cost for ebooks. But some ebooks are like children's books, for example, are books that tend to be pretty high in images, and then they therefore have a higher file size, and that causes a slightly higher delivery cost.
Yeah.
So do you think that like moderating the size of your file is ever going to come down? Like, do you think that level of optimization is necessary, or do you think that if you're really seeing the delivery cost eat into your earnings, then maybe you're just not pricing high enough?
Possibly. Well, we don't have a delivery cost at Kobo, unlike some of those other places that won't be mentioned. But we just assume that as part of our business. Now, I think the other place, just to be fair to them, because I'm not, just because they're the enemy of mine doesn't mean I can't reason with them and stuff like that. I think that the reason they have that delivery cost is probably to pay for the service where you can still download without Wi-Fi. Right, so there's probably a higher cost that they have on their end. I'm just assuming that, I don't know, but we don't charge the delivery cost. Now, the other thing, just to let you know, statistically, ebooks have primarily been a text-based business, novel-based business. So whether it's young reader with very few images in the book, or young reader to young adult to adult book, it tends to be a fiction-based business or a narrative-based business where text is the primary, like a reflowable text. We have tried many different ways to push other kinds of content, children's books, and other sort of enhanced image files, and it doesn't seem yet in the markets we've been playing in, it doesn't seem like that's a big percentage of the business yet. But I imagine as that business grows, as it will over time, I imagine retailers are probably going to get better at helping take a file and optimize it as much as possible without compromising, the embedded images, the embedded video, the embedded audio, all those enhances that, I mean, we're still pioneers in the Wild West. We haven't even made it halfway across, to go with the analogy. We're still on our wagon train, and we've just kind of left the East Coast in terms of this digital growth. The original, one of the original founders of Kobo, Michael Serbinis, had said, we're part of a 20 to 25 year update to the publishing industry. And really, we're what, 5-8 years into it? We're still at the very beginning phases. So I think that kind of optimization is probably going to come as the market bears it and as the market allows the volume to grow and more consumers get used to reading more than just text reflowable books. I'm sure there'll be more technological advances that make that process easier. Like, pop-up digital books with the pop-up is actually a hologram. Come on, that could be fun, couldn't it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So another question I have, and this will be my last question for this section. I've noticed frequently, it seems like even books that have, of mine, for example, that have relatively few reviews elsewhere tend to get, a handful of reviews pretty quickly on Kobo. I'm just curious, does Kobo do anything to encourage reviews, or just to feel that you have a more engaged readership?
I think we have a more engaged readership because our consumers are primarily readers. They're not there to buy other things, not even movies or DVDs or any other product. They're there to buy books and read books. So they tend to be more book nerdish. But the other thing that we do is when they close the book, whether it's on the iOS device, whether it's on the Android device, those are the free apps that we have out there, or the PC or the Mac, or on one of the Kobo readers. Just hold one up there, see, because I got a little product placement here. No matter what it is, we prompt the reader and ask them to submit a review. Now, it's easy for them to just do a quick rating and submit, but they also have the opportunity to do a text review. And I'll be honest with you, when I'm reading it on my phone, it's easier for me to type a message, not so easy to type the message on here. But we also do encourage, we do send some emails asking how they liked it. And I know Amazon does the same sort of thing. I get prompted from places every once in a while when I finish something. Did you like it? Please share that. I think authors also help. Really savvy authors tend to, at the end of the book, if there's a short note, say, hey, the best way you can thank me is by leaving a positive review. And readers tend to be very supportive, particularly if you ask them and remind them that this is important to me. This is important to my livelihood as an author. So I think authors are doing a good job. Retailers like Kobo are doing a good job, and that's how we're getting reviews. But I'm glad to hear that you're having success getting those reviews up.
Yep. All right. Well, that concludes my questions for this section, so I'll hand you off to Jeff for a few more.
All righty. Okay. So my first question for you would be kind of a generic almost, but do you read a lot of books that actually are published there at Kobo?
Published through, you mean Kobo Writing Life?
Yeah, Kobo Writing Life.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So my question would be is, obviously you must have seen a lot that passes through your eyes. What catches your attention? What's like, okay, that looks good. You look at the covers, you look at blurbs. I mean, you being in that industry, what would gain the interest of you?
Honest to God, the cover. Within an eighth of a second, I know if I'm going to want to look at the synopsis or look at it even more. I look at the cover. I mean, and I don't even discriminate much by genre, because I used to say I don't read romance, but I've read a number of romantic suspense and romance novels in the last couple of years, and I've quite enjoyed them. And I remember in university I had to study Daniel Steele, and I remember mocking the book all the way through. I enjoyed it the way you enjoy a Big Mac, which is different than enjoying a really good steak dinner. But I enjoyed it, and it was good. But it was kind of funny because I remember I still have all the notes that I left that said, oh, I bet on page 63 they'll kiss. And it was kind of funny. But I used to think I didn't like romance until I started to read some of the stuff coming through Kobo Writing Life, because thinking, this is selling like crazy. And I could see why. I could see why people were enjoying it so much. So the cover for sure. And I think, and again, it's not just one kind. I mean, I read thrillers a lot. That's probably my favorite genre. But I also read different kinds of books, and I read biographies, and I read a lot of how-tos and nonfiction books. The cover will get my attention. The synopsis will get my attention. To be quite honest, the one thing I don't really pay any attention to is the price, unless it's ridiculously, stupidly high. So that would be the one case where I go, wait a second, this single ebook that's only 10,000 words is $54. I don't think I'll buy it. But typically, I mean, if it's $2.99 or $6.99 or $4.99, I still know, as a lifelong book lover, I know that that's still like less than half price of what a mass market paperback, at least here in Canada, would cost. Because mass market paperbacks are, minimum $9.99 in Canada, if not $12 or $14.99. So,
and just out of curiosity, like traditionally published books, the Kindle price are more than the print copy price. Yeah, and
sometimes
that's the one time I'm like, yeah, I'll wait for it to come down a little bit. But
yeah,
okay, we've spoken to authors before who maintain, that it's better to establish relationships directly with each retailer instead of using services like Smashwords or Draft2Digital. And now, obviously, you're talking to us about the Kobo Writing Life. What would you recommend new authors do?
For Kobo Writing Life, or how to gain their
what they should do? Should they like consider just using something where someone else worries about the hassle of maintaining that or creating a relationship, or like say, oh, okay, I'm gonna go straight to Apple and I can go ahead and get a better royalty, or develop there and get a contact like some people do.
I think now Apple doesn't discriminate in a nice way. Apple, the way we do. I mean, Apple doesn't discriminate if an author wants to come through an aggregator. They're just as happy to not have to talk to the authors directly.
Let's see, what can Apple do to me? I think Apple can't touch me.
They're not going to hurt. They're great. You agree. We were talking earlier about how much you love Apple, so I don't think they're going to say anything bad. Yeah. I think it's up to each author how much time they want to invest in that, and it may not be something that they're comfortable doing. So, I mean, the best thing an author can do is write their next book. That's the absolute best thing. All of the other stuff is wonderful and great, and building relationships and doing marketing and stuff like that. That's fantastic, but not every author can do that or is willing to do that. So that could be a choice for them. In terms of Kobo itself, the one bit of advice I would want to give is patience. We're not as big as the world's biggest online retailer. Therefore, it takes time to build your brand, and it takes time to build that. A lot of times, and this reminds me, I go right back to traditional publishing, and again, listening to the amazing stories that Chris and Dean share. When you're there and you're talking to them at one of the late night chats after the sessions, and they share the fact that really the books didn't take off until the third one came out or the fourth one came out. In traditional publishing, publishers used to give you 3 or 4 books before they knew you were going to start to sell, and that's kind of the stats we're seeing with a lot of indie authors is, sometimes they hit it big on the first release. Sometimes they do well, but oftentimes it's not until the new one comes out. I was even in my Twitter feed today, an author was talking about the brilliance of, when I put that 4th book out, I'm always going to sell more of book 1. Because what happens is people see that there's a new book out, and a lot of people go and start reading the series at the beginning, and not everyone finishes. And we even see that in some of our reading data that supports. That's why you'll always see, unless you got the free first in series, that's where you'll always see is the first book tends to always be your best one.
And there's a lot of people too that like to see an active series, not one that just have written a few titles and haven't touched the series in several years' time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's the brilliance of indie publishing. I was talking to an author at California Dreaming Writers Conference in Brea a few days ago, actually. And it was awesome to see. She had 4 books ready to go, and she was rolling out the series one by one. And so she said, when I see you at RWA in a few months, my entire series will be out. And she had them all ready to go. She'd been working on them for a couple of years. She had incredible amounts of patience to get everything lined up, and she just started to release them, and she was just doing them month by month by month. And because we know, we can see the reading stats, and this was romance readers. I mean, the really engaged ones, they're reading a book or two a day, whereas the average person in the U.S., I think, well, the ones that read, because most people don't read books. They read cereal boxes, and they read whatever, stop signs. Sometimes they read stop signs and pay attention to them. But they, I think the average reader maybe does 4 books a year. So when you think about a consumer that, and I'm not good at math, but how many days in the year?
365.
365 times 2 is going to be more than 600 books a year. I think I'm an avid reader, and I read anywhere from 40 to 50 books a year, and I think, wow, I'm a big reader. I got nothing on these people. These people read 40 books before I get up in the morning. So it's interesting to see. And the brilliant thing about indie authors and indie publishing is you don't have to wait for some sales rep or editor to sell your book to some buyer for Barnes & Noble in New York to geared on a 4-season cycle, right? So he's like, no, sorry, you can't push more than 1 book out a year. So an author who has this story that they want to tell and they want to get out there, they can publish it at their own schedule, at the pace that's good for them, and also good for the readers.
Yep, absolutely, definitely, because especially romance readers. I know my wife is one of them. I've actually read a few thanks to her, and I will say there are some I'm surprised to discover that I like, and I never in a million years would have picked it up, even regardless of the cover or the thing. My wife's like, "No, this is great. You got to read this." And
Yeah,
sure. And then I'm sheepishly in the other room going, "Damn, this is pretty good." But oh well. Okay, that's it for my questions. Let me hand you over to Lindsay. We can get going on some marketing questions.
All right, here's my romance recommendation for my sci-fi and fantasy geeks. Go read The Rosie Project. It's more of a romantic comedy than it.
Oh, it was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, we ought to get those Asperger's people, no problem, right here. So that's a book for our crowd if you want to try a romance. All right,
that was awesome.
All right, a question from, oh, I'm going to mess this up. It's a medical thing. Mutant macrophagy. Is that how you say that?
Okay.
So he was kind of he or she was wanting clarification on how you guys are going to make sure you're profitable. Asked, so is a customer's monthly fee divided by the amount of book reads? So more books read equals less pay per book, because that's the only way you could 100% be profitable.
Yeah, I guess in a nutshell, yeah, because I mean, I think the fee is €10 per month. And so the total pot is, you have 100,000 readers. And again, I'm not good at math, so 10 times whatever that is, that's the pot. If the reads go up, that means the per pay is going to go down. That's just kind of how that works. And so that's something we're still feeling out, right? We have no idea how good is this going to be for readers? How good is this going to be for publishers and authors? We just hope that it is good for everyone, that it gives the consumers stuff that they would like in a way they would like it, and that people can make money off of it. The nice thing I like about it is it's not instead of, it's in addition to. So the a la carte business doesn't go away. You can still continue. Well, I mean, just like some of the other programs, you can still sell the book or someone can read it. So you just have an additional way of making money. So yeah, but it is something where the pay would go down if the reads go up dramatically and the subscription dollar remains the same. Of course, that's going to be a less pay per read. So that is a good question. Thank you.
I suppose this begs the question, because some people will be wondering, because on Amazon, a lot of the reason you want to be in is for the increased visibility, since their sales ranking and borrows seem to both count towards that. Is there a perk like that on Kobo, or is it completely separate on the site, that stuff?
I think the perk is related to some of the other things that we are in the process of doing. And I can talk a little bit about what we're doing with our partnership with Overdrive, our sister company. But if a book is hugely successful in selling, we're going to want to see if we can make it hugely successful in subscriptions. If a book is getting a lot of subscription reads, that tells us that maybe we should feature that book in the a la carte business, because we now have sort of 2 storefronts on both kobo.com in the Netherlands and on bol.com in the Netherlands. And by the way, if a consumer wants to see what Kobo looks like in the Netherlands, go to Kobo. click, you see the little, if I'm assuming most of you are US authors, click that beautiful little US flag, and it'll take you to a page that will allow you to see the various different views of Kobo and the different merchandise experience. You can click on the Netherlands flag. It's in Europe, Netherlands, just to let you guys know. It's in Europe. You scroll down, you look for the flag, and you don't have to know all the flags of the world. I know we know the Canadian and American flag because, you know, we're so close to one another. But some of the flags, like I know I always got France and Italy confused because it's the three same colors, just differently arranged. So it actually says the name of the country under it too. So great, brings me right back to my geography lessons too every time I go to that page. But then you can see what that your book, for example, looks like in euros in the Netherlands, and then you can go to the home page in the Netherlands and see what's being featured and what's being merchandised. The other thing that's really awesome, just a tip for Kobo Writing Life authors, if you see on your dashboard that a book is selling really well in a particular country, you then go click on your book, click on the flag, change it to that country, and maybe you'll see how much better your book is ranking in that country than it is in your country. Because chances are you're not getting a lot of sales in the US on Kobo, but maybe you're getting all your sales in Australia or Canada or other countries in Europe. So that it's a great ego boost to see, you know, you're ranking in the top 10 in this category, but, you know, maybe in the US you're in, you know, you're number 300 or 3000 or whatever the case may be. I know it helps me every once in a while when I go to a you know, really tiny country where very few books sell, and I sold one, and it means I ranked really well.
All right, yeah, it's nice to see that, even if you know you only sold 3. Maybe you're the top 1 in steampunk, so that's pretty cool.
It's all relative.
All right, and we also had a question from Holly, who was wondering, where did I put it? Does Kobo have anything like Amazon ads for authors? Are there Kobo ads that people can use to increase visibility?
The closest thing we have right now when we're trying to look at creative ways to expand it is, it's still in beta release because there's so many fixes we have to make to it, is the promotions tab for Kobo Writing Life authors. And so it's like an ad in that you're competing against other people to get different placement on the website. Now, one of the things we did experimentally, Shana and I were playing with it, is we have our own BookBub account directly where you could do BookBub ads. So we took the Kobo Next feature promo, and there's a landing page for that, and we bought an ad and we dropped a bunch of money in for 1 week to target BookBub people on the BookBub ads who read on Kobo. And we sent them a few different styles of ads. So we're experimenting with how can we not only promote it internally by pushing it through our merchandising lists and the CRM that we do, but are there ways we can bring customers in from outside Kobo to go buy those books? So no, we don't have anything like that yet, but we're always willing to experiment, because if we find something that works exceptionally well, we'll invest in it. And if we find a great way to do things like that, we've even done some Facebook ads specifically targeting lists of Kobo Writing Life titles, and just look for people who like to read. Typically, it's the genres, right? If they're reading sci-fi fantasy, if they're reading romance, if they're reading thrillers, we target them with 3 different banner ads, and we try to bring them in to buy books from that Kobo Writing Life list, because we know if it benefits our authors, they'll continue to want to be part of those lists. So no specific ads that you can buy, but you can pay for placement, and we do take a cut, right? The way that the promos work are, if it's a free book, you pay for that, because there's no easy way for us to shave the cost of goods. But when you're in a feature promo, like a 30% off sale or whatever, we take an additional 10% away from you. So you're only paying for the books that you sold. So instead of paying you 70%, we are only paying you 60%. And I like that way of paying, because I hate seeing authors pay a lot of money and not make it back. That's the thing that I get frustrated with as an author, is like, I spent all this money and I got, I paid my $500 for this ad and I made $3. So I like the idea of a promotion tool that you only pay for if you're successful.
Yeah, sounds good. I like the promotion idea too. If certain other retailers would let us, I'd be happy to pay so-and-so to appear and, across the board in the sci-fi fantasy category for a day or something.
No kidding, eh? That would be nice.
All right, so we've been chatting about this for a while, so I won't ask you too many questions on predictions and industry stuff, but just curious, as somebody, you have a unique perspective on this. What do you see as some of the challenges maybe that are facing indie authors right now? Is it's more competitive. There's changes are happening. What are you seeing?
I think that one of the biggest challenges is, I see Kobo Writing Life growth year over year is still solid. Ebook growth year over year is still solid. No, it's nowhere near the triple-digit growth we saw 3 or 4 years ago, but we were basing that on really low numbers, and now they're really high numbers. So a percentage growth of a much bigger number. And again, I'm not a math whiz, but 1% of a big number or 5% of a big number could be bigger than 600% of a small number. And so a lot of the stats that we see claiming the doom and gloom of the industry is two things. And I think Data Guy, analyzes this quite nicely. Indie authors are taking more of the share, so that's good. And I think some of the big publishers are pricing themselves out of the ebook game. They're driving people to buy the print book because the print book's suddenly more attractive, because a lot of their infrastructure is invested in the shipment of dead trees. That's kind of what they've been built on. So they're not necessarily going to do things. I think a couple things I'm seeing, which is amazing. When I look at the history of traditional publishing, I look at what indie authors are doing, and I see so many parallels. And I'll give you 3 examples. So these 2 brothers, Bennett and Cherf, decided in 1924 in New York that they were going to publish a few of their friends' books at random. And that became Random House. They wanted to publish the books they believed in and were passionate about. That's exactly what indie authors are doing. They're publishing books that they're passionate about and believe in. Talk about niche markets. You may publish a book to a niche market knowing that there's a very specific demographic that no big publisher would touch because they need to sell at least 5,000 copies to make it work. But if you sell 1,000 copies, you're rolling in money, right? You're laughing. And that would be a niche publishing when you think about Penguin, that said, at the time when hardcover books were the be-all end-all of the publishing industry, and some people just couldn't afford it, they decided to seek a niche market and say, let's do mass market paperbacks and make books more affordable than ever before. And that became a huge thing. And then the other one, which is, so that's experimentation in publishing. And the niche market was Simon and Schuster, who one of the gentlemen listened to his aunt who loved doing the Sunday Crossword Times and said, God, I love the Sunday Times, but it only comes out once a week. I wish someone would just compile crossword puzzles and just put them in a book. It never happened before. And they started Simon & Schuster Publishing specifically only to publish crossword puzzle books. And then it became one of the world's largest publishers. So it's an amazing opportunity. And I think indie authors and the big publishers that indie authors often rally against have so much more in common than you guys ever see. And I get frustrated with big traditional publishers who can't see the amazing quality and kind spirit and generosity and passion and intelligence of the indie author community. And also at the same time, sometimes I get frustrated when indie authors can't see that, no, publishers, sometimes they have their heads up their butts, but they're really smart people and they're also passionate about the industry. They just have a different perspective because 80% of their business is still print. And so it's kind of like these different perspectives. But what I do have hope in, I have hope that if traditional publishers and indie authors continue to always put the reader first, if they always put the reader first, they will find a way to succeed. Because if they're serving what the reader wants at a price the reader is willing to pay and can afford, they're going to be successful. Collaborations have always been an interesting element for me as a bookseller. I'm really excited about continuing collaborations and how people can work together to serve, because that's all we're really doing is working together to serve the reader. So I'm really, really hopeful that the heyday of putting up a book for 99 cents and making $1 million, the heyday of that is gone, but that's fine. The serious long-term investment of writing as a career and being able to make a living off of it it's never been more possible than ever in the history of publishing. So I'm going to remain hopeful. Hey, I get to keep my job too, right? That's why I'm hopeful. But I'm going to remain hopeful that working together we can continue to find success stories in different ways that we can't even imagine right now.
All right, me too. It sounds like, well, you actually mentioned Data Guy, and I was kind of cruising through his February report, looking at the pictures, as you do.
Of
And,
course.
I think one of the things on there that showed in the US, like 42% of all book purchases were ebook, and we were kind of the highest. And then in, I think, Canada, UK was maybe in the 30s, with Australia and New Zealand being in the 20%. To me, it sounds like there's still a lot of room for international growth for indie authors or anybody doing ebooks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny because I was sitting down with some folks from Bull who were in our office in Toronto today, and I was also talking to our partners in Italy earlier this week because we're constantly doing a lot of collaborative work with them. And we are seeing the growth, particularly in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. We're starting to see that digital growth that happened in the US. And it happened a lot quicker in the US in a different way. But you have to remember, there's different cultures and so many wonderful different cultures in Europe that we're still seeing that growth, and it's not done growing. So, I mean, we're seeing huge growth. I mean, Kobo purchased Tolino, the giant German company, and we are seeing just in the short time, we're seeing wonderful growth at both Kobo and Tolino in Germany. Because that's a huge global market, and it does sell a lot of English language books, not just obviously German books. So yeah, you're right. There's going to be a lot of more international growth. So even if the U.S. starts to slow down, in terms of their year-over-year growth, there's still opportunities that go far and wide, and that's often part of the Kobo story.
Yeah, you guys definitely seem to be paying attention, and you're in all these markets. So of course, you might struggle in US to gain traction, but maybe certain competitors aren't in some of these other markets.
Not as bigly as we are.
As bigly? All
No, I'm
right.
just trying to use US words now.
Yeah, well, you're probably a guy that looks at the pictures too when the Data Guy blog
Oh,
post
come on.
comes out.
I look at the pictures because I can't do the calculations.
Well, the pictures are good. Well, I guess that begs the question for, maybe those of us who are trying to sell more at Kobo in these international markets. Do you have any suggestions? I know we kind of talked about Facebook ads briefly. How do you suggest I want to sell more in New Zealand? Any thoughts on how I can get those people?
Okay, well, a couple of things you can do. So you can go to kobo.com, you can go and click on the flag and take a look at what's being merchandised in New Zealand. In your categories, browse the categories in New Zealand, take a look at what the top 25, 50 titles in your category are. Have a look at what the average price point is. Have a look at what are the covers? What are the things looking at? How does your book compare to the books that are doing well in that market? It just gives you more insight and analysis. And of course, please do pass on the take a look at the pricing and make sure you're not just sticking in a US price. Make sure you control, at the very least, I would say, control obviously your US price, your Canadian price, your Australia, New Zealand, and Great Britain. At the very least, the primary English language markets, to optimize your pricing for those territories. Because on Kobo, when I look at the stats from 2016, about 50% of Kobo Writing Life author sales are coming from Canada. So if you don't optimize your price in Canada, you might as well not be publishing to Kobo. And a lot of authors are seeing 12 or 15% coming from Australia, and it's been a great market for a lot of authors, particular on Kobo. I know it does do okay on some of the other retailers, but we tend to do well. So that's one bit of helpful advice. I think the other thing is be inclusive, and I'm going to point to the most inclusive linking that I've seen, just because it's tough to manage 50 links to 50 retailers. I really am a huge fan of the bookstoread.com, where you can go in, put your book in, and it has links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Kobo and iBooks and Nook. And it also has access to all the retail partners, particularly a lot of our partners, but it has access to all the various different websites. and you can make a custom URL. So right now I've started, since I started using that a few months ago, instead of putting, I have an Amazon version of my book with all my Amazon links and a Kobo version with all my Kobo links and a Nook version, etc. I just have the single one, and I just find it so much easier for myself to stop driving myself insane. It's like click here and pick your retailer from there. I know it's an extra click, but the biggest thing I've seen authors not do is not include links to a retailer like Kobo in any of their branding or marketing, and then say, well, I never sell at Kobo. And I was like, well, you never linked to Kobo. Nobody knows your books are available there. Like, help us help you. So that's another thing that should be helpful.
I'm definitely going to have to check that out. I think somebody else mentioned it on the show, and I'm horrible because I'll include the Kobo link, but I'm realizing as we're talking, I'm just grabbing the US link, and that's I don't know does it redirect there for Canadian people?
Well, what happens if I go to the US link, it shows me the book, and then it says this book is available in Canada, and I click here and it takes me to the Canadian version. So you're fine.
Okay. But the other side sounds good too, especially if you want to target the other stores and you've got somebody that's a UK reader and they just want to go right to their spot.
Well, maybe they're a WH Smith customer already, so they already have an account, so that's an easier path of resistance. Or in Canada, maybe they never shop from Kobo, they only shop from Chapters Indigo. And so that's where they're buying their books. So again, that link is there. So if the customer goes, hey, I know that retailer, that's where I buy my books. I mean, if it's, in a lot of cases in the US, it's going to be Kindle is going to be the one they see. But they may be a Nook customer. They may be an iBooks customer. They may be whatever. They may even see the IndieBound link. If they're an independent bookstore customer, they can go check that out. So I like that. It's a very inclusive system, and I applaud the folks at Draft Digital for building that. And I use it for my traditionally published books too. It's not just for indie titles. You can make links to any books in the universe on this, which is quite nice.
No, that's good. And then with the newsletter, you don't necessarily want to put on links in your newsletter, lest you be marked as spam either. So fewer is probably better. All right, let me hand you to the guys for a few more questions.
Okay. I actually basically only have one question for this section, which is nice because we're technically past the hour. Because I had 3 questions, but one of them was about children's books, and we've already covered that in the previous section. And the other 2 are kind of samey, so I'm going to collect them into one book. Question that is. So, traditionally, when, as we all know, movies and TV shows are looking for established properties whenever they're trying to do anything. And you'll often, like, it's basically an ongoing joke. Whenever anyone has a significant thing happen to them, we always talk about the book deal. Now, as indie and hybrid starts to take more and more share from traditional publishing, do you think that, like, as the industry matures, we might see big book deals being given to, indies, or perhaps, more and more movies being made based, or TV shows based off of properties that were developed by indies?
For sure. I know they're looking for it. Wattpad, another Canadian company just down the street from us, they're doing that a lot with properties where they're actually helping these independent authors, sell their rights to major studios. They actually have that as a curation. I know we're very much interested in doing that. For example, in France and Italy, we have launched contests where you can actually get published by a publisher, and it's co-publishing. So Kobo will publish the ebook version. You'll get a contract, usually pretty decent author-friendly contract, doesn't lock you in forever. But then there'll be the print book, and with Mondadori, for example, which is a major retailer in Italy, it not only do you get the book contract, but your book's going to be in stock at 600 stores across Italy. So I think more and more retailers and publishers and studios are going to be looking for indie authors. Now, the one concern I have, and this goes back to Christine Rush, paying attention to her blog, The Business Rush, or going to those workshops. I sat in on a workshop that she taught at the masterclass last year, where she talked about how if Hollywood calls, here's what you have to prepare yourself for. Because, I mean, if Hollywood called me after doing my little happy dance on the ceiling, I'd probably give them anything I wanted for $50. It wouldn't matter because I'm so excited they're making a movie. But Chris has seen so many authors walk into traps because it's a lot more ruthless than that. So the one concern I have for indie authors who may have a great property, and I know it worked out really, really well for The Martian, but imagine if he had not, you know what I mean? Imagine if they'd taken advantage of him and he didn't get any of the royalties from the movie or anything like that. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, so I think yeah, we're going to see more of that, and I'm even in contact with publishers all the time that are very interested. So, for example, we're even I think I talked earlier about Overdrive. We're constantly sending our library partner sales stats on which Kobo Writing Life titles are doing really, really well in different genres, so they can help libraries decide what books that they may not even be familiar with, but maybe they want to buy for their libraries. And so there's a lot of people trying to curate and find, and they're very aware that there's amazing content coming out of the indie author community. And the great thing about it is that's kind of what publishing is. Publishing's always had that desire to find the next great thing and prop it up. So this just gives us a whole new realm of, not just from a hidden slush pile in the back room of a publisher's warehouse, but this is a live and breathing, interacting with reader community that's even more vibrant than it's ever been before.
Absolutely. And it's sort of funny, like I hadn't thought about it, but as you say, like you could easily be tricked into a predatory deal, that it's in an awful way that almost makes it more likely that developers and producers are going to come after indies, because by definition they don't have the same sort of infrastructure and savvy to avoid these predatory deals. So it's almost like it's a double-edged sword that we are quote unquote naive.
It is. I mean, it's one of the reasons we signed up with a service provider, DigiRights, so that authors who were worried about that could just create a license, and then they have an entity to help take care of that for them. I know it's not for every author, but it's a service that could be valuable through the author services tab. And even like looking at how can we push more authors to the free access where they can read stuff that Christine Catherine Rush has written about, being careful about contracts and just being leery and just making sure there's certain guidelines you can follow. So whatever we can do to help educate authors I think it's our goal to make sure that authors are well equipped, well informed, so they make the right decisions and don't end up, finding themselves in oh God, if only I had known. I mean, myself as a self-publishing guy, my heart breaks when I'm in a room, and constantly, it happens all the time, and I talk about, we got to be careful about certain publishers, because they the vanity press things where they're going to take $10,000 of your dollars and they're going to make all these promises, and you're going to end up stuck with a basement full of books. And there's always some poor person in the back of the room who went, oh my God, why didn't I know this before? I just spent $10,000 on books I can't sell. So I think it's our job as retailers. We're giving authors the power to publish and make their work available, but I don't think we're doing enough, and we need to keep working at how can we empower authors, not just with the ability to publish, but the ability to know what they're doing and to be prepared for that. Be prepared for success. When Hollywood comes calling, what are you going to do besides the happy dance?
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that's it for my questions. I'll hand you off to Jeff for a few more.
Okay, let's see. You already answered that one. You already touched on that one. All right. Do you think having a perma-free series starter is still the way to go for an indie author? I mean, from Kobo's perspective, is it still a viable marketing strategy?
110%. We continue to find huge success in it. One of the things that we're doing is we're consciously pushing, well, I call it the crack books, right? The free hit of the free, here's your first one, and then you'll come back and buy the rest of it. We're pushing it through device. So any new person who downloads an Android device, we're not just pushing the bestseller list to them, but we're pushing them that weekly curated free type lists, which typically are not necessarily first free in series, but they're typically connected to authors who have other books to sell. Because we know if we can hook them and we can get them to read, so long as we can get them to keep reading, they'll come back, and if they like that author, they'll go on and buy. And we know that if we can get them through that book, the purchases, the conversion is quite high. We're also doing, I'm working really, really hard with our CRM team, because we have two kinds of customers. We call them freegans and Reggies. So people who register but never buy, or people who only ever download free stuff. So what historically we've tried to do is try to show them cheap titles or cheaper titles, but there's that reluctance to buy. But if we can continue to feed them the right drugs, if we can continue to feed them really good free content and keep them reading digitally,
Drugs, huh?
we know that, well, it's kind of like that. If we can keep you reading digitally, you're gonna find an author where you just can't not read their next book.
Exactly.
Or at the very least, what we've done for those readers is we've given them something to read, and if they read that much, they talk about it. And maybe they say, well, I just read this great, book by Lindsay Broker, and whoa, Lindsay Broker, I'm going to check her out. And then the next time this author, whatever platform they're on, whether it's Kobo or Amazon or whatever, they see a Lindsay Broker and go, hey, someone was telling me she's great, I'm going to try her book. So it might not even lead to sales on Kobo. It might just lead to sales in general, which never hurts.
Because usually that's the first thing I do. If I read a really good book, I go to my wife and said, man, you need to check this out. This is really good. And then, of course, she might say, okay, to one of her friends, hey, I really enjoyed this thing called steampunk. Maybe we should, check it out. And you might be interested in this. And then it just goes from there. So, yeah, it works out well.
So it never hurts, right?
All right. I see. We've also covered that other question. My last question for you that I have then is just something that I heard you mention briefly. You talked about getting a promo with Kobo next month. Can you tell us exactly how authors might try to apply for the same thing? I mean, are there any prereqs or what goes on with that?
So if you don't have access to the promotions tab, email writinglife@kobo.com. And that'll get punted over to a merchandiser team. They'll actually take a quick look at your account. If we look at your books, and in our judgment, we think we're just going to reject all your books. Let's be honest, because your covers suck. We'll probably say, sorry, it's in beta. Please check it out when we come back, because we don't want to tell you your baby's ugly. But if we look at it and go, yeah, these look good, we basically say, okay.
Way to say that.
We're Canadian, right? What we'll do is we'll enable your account, remind you it's in beta, so you got to scroll through this horrible list and stuff. But if you're patient with us, you can try it out. Unfortunately, there's no sort or filter because it's part of the beta fixing we have to do. You apply for the promo. Now, the other thing too is we may only have 300 spots, but we'll get 1,000 people apply or 1,000 titles apply. If you get rejected from a promotion, it doesn't mean we don't like your book. There's actually, within the promotion tab, you can actually click there and you can actually see the reason. We actually give a reason, but it doesn't come in the email. So we may have actually said, we don't want this because you submitted it as fantasy, but we really think it's better under romance because it's a crossover. So please resubmit it as a romance title or to this romance promo. That's one thing you can do to get access to the promotions. And was there a second part to the question that I forgot?
Well, no, I was saying there's any prereqs there. And
the prereqs are usually we usually have a specific, we say we're only looking for titles that are published within the last 6 months, or we're only looking at titles that are in this price range. So please read those details because they're different for every promo. And those are and we don't care. If you have no reviews, we don't care. We're going to judge you by the cover. So we don't go, hey, this only has 59 reviews. We're not going to, no. We look at it and go, do we think a customer would like this? Great, maybe they'll review it. So that's all. So you don't have to worry about going, I don't have any reviews on this yet. All we care about is, does this book look good and will it fit in this promo?
Now, if out of curiosity, you guys take a look at the book and go, oh my God, that cover is handmade. It's got like basic Times New Roman fonts, and then we're not going to do that. What exactly do you put in the reason why it was declined?
Okay, so on our end it says the cover's ugly, but on your end it says this book's cover doesn't appeal to its target audience, which is people with good taste. No, which is so on our end it's a quick one saying bad cover. I think it says actually bad cover. Click bad cover. On the other end, on the author's end, it's a little bit more diplomatic. It says this book doesn't appeal to its target audience. No, the book's cover doesn't appeal. If the merchandiser does feel something very important, they will enter a manual bit of text. There's a free text area where they can additionally put that in. So like I said, they may say, you know what, this cover looks more like it would suit a romance audience, but you're trying to sell it to a fantasy audience, whatever. So if we say bad cover, we may give you additional tips or help. Or we may say, please, like Comic Sans, like, really? Like, so, or whatever the smart ass comment we might make. But we sometimes will put in helpful comments saying, "Oh my God, could you please resubmit this next month? We think we'd like to feature it in whatever." So we will if we see something that we feel really bad. Now, one of the reasons is a default. We didn't even get to look at it because we've already filled our spot. I think we have like 5 or 6 different token reasons, kind of like an editor's checklist for rejection, but then there's always a free text field to add more information.
I like that feature that, I can't tell you how many times you try and get like a really good ad or whatnot, and it says, no, you weren't chosen at this time. Feel free to try again later. And they never say why. So it'll be
I
good.
know,
You
I
actually say
hate
like,
that.
okay, let's go ahead and submit this one here. Everything looks good. It's professional as crazy. And you guys might say bad cover, but just meaning, no, it's supposed to be for fantasy. It looks like it should be going for romance. You got a guy and a girl on there that's showing a little too much.
Yeah.
We're going to put it in that one instead. But yeah, it's good to know. I definitely like that. But,
we want to, because we're authors too, right? Like, we get the well, it didn't get in BookBub, no reason. So we're like, well, okay, how can we help authors so that next time they know why? Sometimes it's like, well, the book's not new enough. We were looking for books that were within the last 6 months, and this is a book from 10 years ago. I mean, great, I'm happy you have it, but it's not going to be featured in this promo, which is a new release promo.
Are many of the people that work at Kobo authors, out of curiosity?
On my team, there's myself and Shayna. And so Cami was an editor with a French publisher, and Sandra, who just joined working for Cami, was a editor and publisher. And let me see who else. There are other authors who work for Kobo, but just specifically within the Kobo Writing Life team, there's a few of us. And what I like about it is I use the other platforms, so I'm constantly looking for what I like, what I don't like. So I'm constantly saying, well, these guys have this feature. I think authors find this useful because I find it useful. And I'm kind of fortunate because every once in a while I'm right. And a thing that I like or a thing that I wanted to have, I find out that, 10,000 other authors want this too. So that's kind of a perk. And it also is a perk because when something happens in the industry, a lot of folks can turn to me internally at the company and say, this is what's going on in the author community. Is that something you would use? And because I don't just focus on publishing on Kobo, and I publish on the other platforms. I mean, I make most of my money from Kobo and Amazon. Those are my 2 biggest retailers. And some months Amazon's bigger than Kobo, and some months Kobo is bigger than Amazon. So it's not always the same. Every once in a while, I do okay on iBooks. But I think there's a benefit in us understanding it from the author's perspective, and I never want to lose that. I never want to lose touch with that because I think that's a really important thing to me. That I know Michael Tamblyn hired me specifically because I have book selling experience. I respect traditional publishing, but I also respect indie publishing. And so he knew that I would be able to find a balance between my writer hat and my business hat and try to find something that can work for both of us. And I respect him, so I have to continue to work at my best to give the author community everything that Kobo can.
Well, you guys are doing a hell of a job, let me tell you. I'm definitely going to investigate that Kobo Writer Life because that sounds interesting. So we're looking at
cool.
that.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps up my questions there. Let me hand you back over to Lindsay. We'll see if we can wrap this up for you.
All right. Yes, Jeff and Joe are Smashwords people. Actually, we all are. I have all my stuff still from the early days on there, but I don't think we've convinced them.
I still have all my books in Smashwords,
Yeah,
but that's
I don't think we've convinced them to go direct on Kobo.
Like that little crack. Try one title and see if you like it. You might come back for more.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson. No KU for this author.
All right. Final question is from what are you watching, listening? I guess you're watching if you're on YouTube. Holly again and a couple other folks were wondering about categories and kind of pointing out that like on Amazon, you can really drill down, and she was interested in multicultural / interracial romance and wondering if Kobo plans to do any of the subcategories.
Yeah, so the subcategories, there are real limited subcategorization of the BISAC industry subject codes, which Amazon is a much more automated store. Ours is more of a manually curated bunch of merchandisers have to put stuff in places. So if we're finding a lot of titles and enough titles to populate an additional one, we can always make the case. So I mean, by all means, send us some examples, send us some emails, and we'll take it up with the merchandising team, because they actually control those categorizations, and they can go ahead and expand or contract depending on that. Again, it's not a quick turnaround, and there have been some categories that we put in the hopper and it took 6 months before we got them added, but it did happen eventually. So, I mean, we're always willing to be open to it, but we are limited by the fact that we're a lot more human than we are robotic. So a lot of our processes require humans to push buttons and make those changes. So please ask. And the more you ask, the more we can take that up with the merchandising team, and the more likely it is that we can look at making a business case. I'll just, as an example, as an industry person, I remember going to New York for the first time to sit in with the BISG committee as a small Canadian bookseller, and asking them to please expand the hockey categorization to more than one, because they have 45 baseball categories in the book industry standard because it's American, but hockey, which is our religion up here in Canada, and there's only one. Hey, come on, there should be at least 3 or 4, right? So, but again, and what I did is I showed them books in my store. Well, I was working for Chapters, the major retailer in Canada at the time. I showed them a huge catalog of books that could have been in that category, and said, right now they're sitting in this category, but they need to be in this subcategory because it'll appeal to that target audience better. And that's how we're merchandising them on the physical shelf, but we don't have a way to systematically show that. So again, make the case. Help the industry become better by sharing your passion and your knowledge and your markets and the things that you know better than we do to help us educate us. So that was Holly, I think, who asked the question. Thank you, Holly. And keep asking, keep pushing those questions, keep pushing those things. The industry changes because of a desire from the content that's being created and consumed, and booksellers like us should be paying attention to that to better serve the readers. And you can help us with that by, giving us that feedback.
All right, great. And we should maybe point out too that Amazon didn't always have all these great subcategories either. Probably just having been in the business for 20 years now, they've gradually added some. I know since I started publishing, I've seen them add some in fantasy that weren't there, in science fiction. So it probably in time will, just as the bookstores need to drill down a little more.
Well, I mean, the erotic category, for example, when I first started in publishing, erotica was erotica, and that was it. There were anonymous books, and then there were the whatever in paperback. And now there's so many subcategories of erotica, thanks to, obviously, the industry stretched and grew, and digital created all these subgenres. It's fantastic. Same things happen, subcategory. Even steampunk, did it exist? Is more than a,
No, it's been around for maybe 4 years now. It definitely came on after I started publishing.
And now there's subcategories of steampunk, correct?
I'm not sure, but there's like fantasy westerns or western fantasy. So that there's now places you can actually put your books besides epic fantasy if you're
that's good.
writing secondary world stuff.
Again, because that better serves the reader. And so the more evidence we see that there's enough things to serve a reader, that helps us make that an easier pitch. So we show the merchandisers, hey, look at all these titles. They could all be in this category. Too bad we don't have this category. Too bad no customer can find them very easily. How do we help customers? And that's kind of what we do on behalf of authors, is those kinds of pitches.
All right, great. Well, that wraps up our questions for tonight. Do you have anything you'd like to plug or send people to before you head out?
I think I babbled on long enough. I would say, if you like podcasts, we have the Kobo Writing Life podcast. I'm actually going to be producing the next episode once we hang up. Going to push that through the RSS feed, and that's every second week. And KoboWritingLife.com. It's tips, whether you're publishing directly with us, or you're publishing through Smashwords or another aggregator. We like to put tips on how to, optimize your sales. And obviously, if there's specific tips for Kobo, we like to share those there too. So just check us out there.
All right, sounds good. I will find the link for that too and include it in the show notes. This is episode 125. We're getting up there. marketingsff.com. So come on by. If you have a comment, leave it and let us know let Mark know how you enjoyed his interview, or don't. But we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, everyone. Yeah, he's tough. He's a big guy.
Thanks, guys. Always great to chat with you guys.
So long, everybody.
Bye, everyone.